So again, welcome everybody. Today we're talking to Tina. And for those who don't know me, my name is Buba. I'm kind of known as the Heart of a Giant, which is simply because I'm 6'8", and when I was sick, when I got sick, they told me that my heart was too big. So we figured we figured it must have been the Heart of a Giant. And then also it was my way of saying kind of thank you to everybody that I kind of come across along the journey that has been very helpful. Many of you are actually on the call today. I have Wendy, Eric, and Anna and Erika from About. We have Odile. So a lot of people are coming across, including special people like Tina that who we're talking to today. And so this is, and as I went through the journey, it was essentially to share my story with my friends that were back home, that I didn't want to be sending emails every day and stuff. So I decided to start a blog. And as it evolves, we figured, what can we do with this story? And one idea was to really amplify the patient voices. And that's the platform we're putting in place as we go forward. So with that, today we're talking to Tina, who's a heart patient that's I look up to. I first met her through the heartfailure.net, which is a blog, which is a platform where patients come to advocate about heart failure. I just, first thing I saw was a title or a blog was about the Chronicles of a Pretty Lady, and then I found that very intriguing, and I saw on the call, and she has this attitude that is very essentially contagious, and I think it's been, that was the first thing that is kind of drawing to us. So as I studied this call series, I figured I would also talk to her, and we have a similar story in the sense that we share the same device, the same technology called the L.V.A.D. We'll get on to that a little bit. She's had it for 9 years. I just celebrated my 4th year. So when she tells me she's had it for 8 years, which was last year, I just stopped. I was like, okay, I'm not worried about how long I've had it already, because I felt like 2 years was too much. But I have the Ultimate 3, which is the latest, and she has a second one.
Oh, whatever.
But we'll get to that. We'll get to that too. So today we'll welcome Tina, and I really welcome everybody for joining. Thanks for joining. It means a lot to me, and I'm sure it means a lot to Tina. So with that, Tina, can you maybe tell us about, for those who don't know who you are, and maybe also tell us why you're so keen on talking about the Pretty Ladies Chronicles?
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, everybody. My name is Tina Marie Marsden. As Buba said, I was diagnosed with heart failure at the age of 28. It's actually called P.P.C.M, Peri-partum Cardiomyopathy. So it was heart failure induced by pregnancy. So even though we don't have that in common, we do have the L.V.A.D in common. So after having heart failure for a couple of years, my condition actually started to decline, which led to me needing the L.V.A.D to sustain life. And I've been doing actually pretty well with that for just over 9 years now. It was 9 years in January. So I'm going to start with just telling where Pretty Lady Chronicles came from. I don't want people to think that it's just like arrogant and like, oh, she thinks she just looks so, she thinks she's beautiful. But even though that how you feel about yourself actually does affect your physical and your mental health, I will say that part. But I'll just say that I was out shopping. I won't say the name of the store, one of my favorite stores. And I was waiting on a fitting room. So I go into the fitting room, the dressing room area, and I walk to the back, and the handicap fitting room was taken. So I come back out, and the woman working the fitting room, she kind of looked at me and she said, well, there's other rooms available. And I said, oh, well, no, I need the handicap room. And she kind of looked at me as though, well, there's nothing wrong with you, because of course, heart failure is an invisible disability. So people can't see what's wrong, what you're going through. And so I go ahead and sit down on the bench, and she's just kind of looking. It's a little awkward. So I went ahead and started sharing my story about the L.V.A.D and how I had a device connected to me, and sitting in the handicap fitting room actually makes it easier to try on clothes because I can sit my bag next to me while I'm taking clothes on and off versus trying to stand up and do all this in a little small confined space with not enough sitting space. And so I share this whole long story about the L.V.A.D and, show her my little cord and my batteries, and I have all this connected to me. And she just looked at me with, like, first off, it was just a look of pity, like I was like 1 foot in the grave. And she was like, "Oh, but you're a pretty lady." And I was just like, "Are you serious?" Like, I couldn't even respond. Like, I literally just looked away, looked at the wall. And I was like, with everything I just shared about my journey, my story with this invisible, like, I have a pump attached to my heart to help sustain life. But the takeaway was, "But you're pretty." And so, I joke with my friends when I couldn't wait to get out of there. I was like, "Hey, you guys, I'm going to look so good in that casket. Forget everything I'm going through because I'm going to be pretty, you know?" So I was like, I'm going to take this and run with it. Like, regardless of everything I'm going through, at least I have my looks. I'm a pretty lady. And hey, and this is a good day. Let me just say that. This is a good day.
Well, I haven't seen you on a bad day, so I would love to get other people to confirm that. But thank you so much. I think that's for many of us heart failure patients, we probably can have similar stories, but this, I never got a handsome one or a pretty one, so this is special to have. But I was wondering how far along was that in, I guess, in your L.V.A.D journey? Like, was it
Oh,
early
that was just 2 years ago.
2 years ago? Oh wow,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that was just 2 years ago. And I was also diagnosed with heart failure in 2002. So I mean, just 2 years ago. That's why I said with everything I just shared, like, that was the takeaway. But and it was just the look that she gave me. I think that went along with it,
Yeah,
and was like, okay, but I'm still here. I'm thriving. I'm alive. Like,
that's awesome. So I think I guess for most of us probably want to hear about what was life like, growing up. What kind of person were you? And also, your mom is here, so probably ask her to confirm some of the details. So
oh man,
hopefully you get
see,
us to. But what was life like before you got diagnosed the first time? What was Tina then?
okay. So here's the thing. I was always healthy, always active. My mother kept us active. I mean, I've done ballet, I've done softball, I've done volleyball, I've done basketball, I've done kickball leagues. I did piano, I played piano. Like, I was just always physically active. Girl Scouts, brownies, like everything. So I had a very active childhood. We traveled everywhere. So to get the diagnosis at the age of 28, after being healthy my entire life, not being aware of any pre-existing conditions in my family, um, not being aware of those things. I later found out those things are on my father's side of the family. It was a total shock to be diagnosed at the age of 28 after giving birth to my second son. So that part was kind of like, I guess there was a little denial there because it's like, well, no, I'm healthy. There's nothing wrong with me. How does this happen when I've always been an active, fit person? I'm 5'10", so I'm have somewhat of athletic stature. So it's like, if you look at me, even if you look at me right now with my L.V.A.D after being diagnosed in 2002, you would never know.
Yeah.
So, but life before that, it was, I must say we had a great life. My mother afforded us everything that she was able to afford us. We traveled, we were able to connect with family in I have family in 26 states.
Yeah.
And my mother's
Oh
that one
wow.
that's my mother's the one that's going to travel and make sure that we stay in touch with our family.
Hi, mom. I was
Hi,
gonna wait for later, but I feel like we have to welcome you in now. Hi, mom. How you doing? You're
I'm doing
looking good
great.
there.
Thank you.
You're
So good to
looking.
see you all.
I like the outfit.
Oh, well, thank you.
So I wanted to know, as a mother, how was that? I mean, that was your second child, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're getting a new grandkid, and then you're finding out that your daughter has a condition like that. What was that day like for you?
wow, it's like a bomb. It's a heavy lift. It was very, very heavy. Like I couldn't, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe that. Like you say, she was healthy and everything was going about her life. Everything was normal and like, wow, just shocking news. Like, wow, you would see that phone call and say, oh, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. So I just had to just start calling on the Lord, calling on God, just praying, believing that He'll touch her and He'll heal her. And I still believe that He'll give her a new heart. Everything gonna be great for her. And it's so far it's been great for her. She's living a beautiful life, normal life. So
Yeah.
proud of her.
Oh, that's
Yes.
amazing. That's amazing. We'll
Yeah.
probably come back again because I feel one of the big things I think in our journey is the support system. So I'll circle back again on that. But thank you so much for sharing that, and everybody. I'm sure everybody's proud of you too. So thanks for joining us today.
Hmm.
So Tina, that day for you, what was the process with the doctors? What were you feeling in terms of symptoms? What was going on? And maybe what were some of your plans around that? Because I'm sure, new baby, we have a lot of big plans beside the cribs and stuff like that.
Well, my initial diagnosis didn't take place until 4 months after postpartum, 4 months after I gave birth. So during the process of, well, in between that time period, I moved from Indiana to Atlanta. So after I moved to Atlanta, I actually felt like, well, I had the flu. There was like a flu pandemic going on. Go to the ER, it's packed. I was short of breath, of course, fluid retention. Not that I knew what that was at the time. And just really just not being able to breathe and just overall just feeling sick. So I went to the ER. I was initially sent home. I was told that I had a touch of walking pneumonia. There were no x-rays done. He literally listened to me with a stethoscope, told me I had a touch of walking pneumonia, gave me a prescription, told me not to come back for 3 days to give the medicine 3 days to work, and sent me on my way. So 2 days later, I didn't make it 3 days. 2 days later, I felt like my grandmother passed away when she was 90. And before she passed away, she lived with my mother. She lived with different family members. And I remember helping to care for her. And she had a hospital bed at my mother's house, and she couldn't lay flat. And because I always remember her saying, you have to elevate my bed because if I lay flat, I can't breathe. And I'm 28, and I remember laying down, and I was like, I felt like my grandmother. I was like, I couldn't lay flat. And I called one of my friends. I said, I need to go back to the hospital. I said, because if I go to sleep, I'm not going to wake up. Like, I just knew that I wasn't going to wake up. I couldn't breathe. So when I went back, there was nobody in the ER. I met a doctor. They actually took a lot of time out, listened to me, did some x-rays. And he comes back in and tells me I had a hole in my lungs. I had walking pneumonia, and I had congestive heart failure and P.P.C.M. And I'm like, but I was just here. Like, no, that's not possible. I'm rushed into ICU. They're telling me how sick I am, that I can't care for my kids. And that whole moment was just like, even now when I think about it, that whole moment was just like unbelievable, because I told him, I said, I was just here. The doctor told me not to come back for 3 days. I said, what would have happened if I didn't come back for 3 days?
Yeah.
And the nurse looked at me and she said, only God knows. Like, it was to the point where they wouldn't even allow me to leave until I could find someone to care for my children, because I told them my mother couldn't get on the plane because she had pink eye. They wouldn't allow her to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And I just moved here, so I didn't know that many people. I hadn't built up a circle yet. And I didn't have anybody to watch my children, and they wanted to place them for Child Protective Services. And I was like, no, because I'm going to have to prove I'm healthy to get them back. It was like, I know how this works. And so I said, I will leave. I'll be back in 2 days. My mother will be here in 2 days. And I remember them looking at me and they said, if you leave, we can't promise you that you'll be allowed to see 2 days. That's when it really hit me and I lost it. 28.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you cry?
Mm.
Huh?
Did you cry there?
Oh, did I cry?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I broke down.
And you were
Yeah.
alone at the hospital with this, like when you went to this, at this moment, you were alone at the hospital.
Yeah, this is when I went back to the ER.
Yeah.
So this is when I went back, and then they just laid all this on me. At that point, I just lost it.
Yeah.
I'm like I literally was just here. Like, so it also taught me to listen to myself and listen to my body. So when you get those symptoms, like when I felt like that if I went to sleep, I wasn't going to wake up, more than likely I wouldn't have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you really have to trust your own instincts and follow through with those, and don't second guess yourself. Like when you feel like something's wrong, and like for example, I went back. So he told me not to come back for 3 days. So what if I just said, well, the doctor told me not to come back?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have a first question about when you want to know if there was any kind of genetic testing done within your father's side. So how do we know it was from your father's side?
Well, I don't know that was from my father's side. My heart disease was induced by pregnancy. So I actually have P.P.C.M, Peri-partum Cardiomyopathy.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that there was a history of heart disease on my father's side until I got my diagnosis. And to answer the question, no, I haven't gone through any type of genetic testing, but I do know that my grandmother passed away from a heart attack, heart-related issues, I should say. My father passed away from a heart attack, and one of my uncles, and then I've had another aunt that had some, not an aunt, but an uncle that had some stents or something put in.
Yeah.
But I should say that, like, for example, my father, he was, he drank. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. Like, I didn't have anything that you would think that would add to that and help, I guess, create some type of pre-existing condition or to make the condition worse when you already have a family history. So some of these other things that they may have done by drinking or smoking that could have helped brought it on for them, I didn't do any of those things, and I had always been healthy and active.
Yeah, yeah. Now I think most stories, like the diagnosis for those that didn't know, is very similar. So for me, I remember it was October, I think, and I was running a boot camp. So I was exercising my friends, and I was kind of teaching, trying to get people fit, including myself. But I was fairly fit. So one day I tried to run with them, and I couldn't keep up. And like, this doesn't make sense. But then likely I didn't force it. And around the same time, it felt like flu symptoms too, and which was so then I went to the doctor, my primary, to have a treatment. And 1 month after, I still kept coughing. And one day, it was a Saturday, I remember, and afternoon, and I told I guess we were dating at the time, my girlfriend, who's my wife now. I told her, I'm like, we have to go to the hospital, and she's like, why we're supposed to be spending time together, because we both used to travel a lot. She's like, we're supposed to be spending time together, you want to go to the hospital? And I, I'm like, let's go. And then, like you said, I looked fine. I was just coughing, and I remember the first doctor came and is like, but then this was in South Africa, so in their local language, which she thought I didn't understand, she was like, oh, people are here for serious stuff, but this guy's here with just a flu. I'm like, okay, we'll be out of here soon, right? And then they took forever, like 2 hours, 3 hours, go do x-rays, go do blood. And then another doctor comes. That's when I was like, okay, this might be serious. And it's like, your heart is too big. I'm like, what do you mean? What does that mean? And then he explained the situation. I remember my wife, she's a consultant. She's like, your heart is too big. How much percent is too big? So we didn't even know where to start, because it was like such a shock, And that weekend I was trying to reach out to my primary, but it was not available because it was at the conference. So then, overnight, and I was 26. So I think yours was at 28, but I was 26 at that time. And in parallel to the grandparents, my grandfather was 90, and and I remember this is something hopefully we'll fix as we go. But when I left the hospital, I didn't know what to look for, what to do. We just knew that I had a follow-up. Obviously, first thing you do is go to Google, and then I'm checking WebMD and all of those.
Google can be the enemy.
Yes, I just remember seeing 5 years. Life expectancy was 5 years. And obviously, I didn't care about the date. I mean, I do research, but I didn't care about what the data was from. I just remember 5 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, 2012, 2017. But my grandfather was about 90, 95, I think, something like that. So I'm like, how am I gonna have the same life expectancy as my grandfather? So it was rough, and I think, like you said, you have to, and then I was in doubt because I didn't know what caused it. So we didn't know what caused it, and I was kind of feeling guilty. Maybe I did something, but never drank, never smoked. Yeah, always exercising. So it was kind of a scary one. But I think one point you said is like you just knew something was wrong, which is comes through the habits and stuff. How much of that do you think is still helping you throughout this journey? That level of self-awareness that something might be on or off, because you still have
Oh
to
my
go to the
gosh.
follow-ups and things like that.
It saved my life multiple times. I've caught blood clots, like I've felt like something wrong with my legs, tingling sensations, like my leg falling asleep, being persistent about, hey, there's something going on in my leg, we need to figure out what it is. And twice we found blood clots. Yeah, just by listening, like I literally can feel when something's off or something's not right.
Yeah. Is that something that can be taught? Like, can be explained? How can somebody else can pick that up?
I think we all get a little of that in some type of way, and maybe some of my other heart sisters that are on the call can chime in on that. I think we all get that a little bit, but I think the biggest thing is not being afraid to speak up and advocate for yourself. Because sometimes, when you go to the doctor and you're told, oh, it's just, oh, you have anxiety, or, oh, you're just stressed because you're a woman, especially being a woman. And then being an African-American woman, that takes it to another level. So just being dismissed and disregarded, just as an individual, I think that becomes a deterrent for people over time.
Yeah.
So then you feel like, well, nobody's going to listen, nobody's going to believe, or maybe it is just all in my head, maybe I'm paranoid. But no, you have to listen to those little feelings that you get, and you fight for yourself.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned I guess the race part, because that's something I wanted to touch on is yeah, how does being a black person, I guess, in the US, and especially for your case, being a black woman, how does that help or make it harder? I'm also saying that because, first in my case, I cannot push back even against the literature when we talk about the I'm forgetting now, but like how much high blood pressure, for instance, we have in certain communities. And I feel like, okay, the story is not fully explained because, for a group of people that is kind of living under stress, the blood pressure will be higher, than just any normal situation, including adding to the other factors about food and all the other facility issues. But in your case, how much of that do you think plays into your journey as you seek care and as you progress through that journey?
It plays a major role in my journey. What I've learned over time is when you advocate for yourself, unfortunately, sometimes you have to be careful in how you do that, because then you don't want to get yourself blacklisted or labeled as that patient that questions everything, even though you should question, and you do have a right to question. At the same time, you don't want to be overly, reactive to everything. There are some things that, we have to sometimes sit back and process those and really examine what's taking place and to see if they have your best interest at hand. Because my thing is, this is my life. So my cares, of course, is going to affect my outcome. Yeah. This is not anybody else's outcome but my own. Yeah. So, I have run into roadblocks with that, because when you fight back, and it shouldn't even be considered fighting back. It's just because you want to speak up and you want to advocate for yourself. That's what we should all be doing.
Yeah.
But that's one of the disparities that you're speaking of when it comes to like food insecurities or not having access to quality health care. Just the fact that people are afraid to advocate for themselves. That's a part of the oppression and systemic racism that's been taught over time. And that's one of the reasons that also leads to us having, being at a higher risk for developing things like heart disease and high blood pressure and diabetes. Because when you don't go to the doctor and you don't speak up for yourself, well, what's going to happen? You're just going to sit at home and get sicker.
And get what? Yeah.
And that's going to happen. But I'm at the point now where I'm going to say what needs to be said to make sure that I'm protecting my own best interest, because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I just, like I said, you just have to be careful about sometimes how you go about doing that, just to make sure that you're not, burning any bridges. Because to me, we're all supposed to be a team. My healthcare team, my nurses, my doctor, whatever, coordinators I may have, my family, my friends, we're all in this together. So we all should be able to work together and communicate with each other for the best interest of the patient.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned team, and I'm going to segue into some of the LVAD questions in a moment, because the relationship you have with your primary doctor and the relationship you have with, in a situation where it's an accident or it's a flu, like a traumatic instance, is different, or even a surgery is different than chronic care. Like now you have blood pressure meds that you have to take and adjust to every day. So you have that relationship with your team. With my team, it's tricky because we have, let's say, five nurses, and there's always one of them that will be, the right person to kind of put you in a line, or the right person that will know when something is off. So maybe before I talk about the L.V.A.D team, but like, who are some of those people that's been pivotal in that journey? I'm sure the list might be long, but you can call them as groups.
Because part of that team is broken up. That's another thing, because when you do build that relationship and that rapport, and it's not that, you want to hold on to people, but I can't expect you not to want to grow in your own career paths in your life. So then when people grow and they move on, then it's like, oh man, I got to start this all over again with somebody else new.
Yeah.
So I'm at that stage right now where I'm redeveloping relationships with new people on my team, because my team has changed over the last couple of years. But I will say that having those relationships with past physicians, nurses, coordinators, it makes the world of a difference. When I know that I have somebody on my team that's advocating for me, that's fighting for me, that understands me, that respects me and wants the best for me, then you can trust your team to do what's best for you.
Yeah.
So when no patient should ever be in a position where they can't trust their team. So when you're able to build that bond and that relationship and build that trust, that of course is going to affect your not even just your care, but it affects your recovery.
Yeah, that's I like the word he said a few times was trust, and I appreciate that a lot. And I think for me the team is just getting bigger and bigger, because like every other, like the patient, including yourself, you all become part of the team. And in my team, I have, like I said, I have the people that make the pump, the H.E.A.R.T.S 3 pump, or maybe also H.E.A.R.T.S 2. But I hope one day you get to meet them, because great group of people. It's my little shout out to them. But
okay, let's just talk about this H.E.A.R.T.S 3 versus 2 thing.
So,
my H.E.A.R.T.S 2 has done me fine.
No, I'm getting there. Don't worry, I'm getting there. But essentially, what was the day like when they told you you needed a pump? Like I'm sure they said you needed
denial. Not denial, resistance.
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't getting that. I was only 36 and never been married. No.
Yeah.
That wasn't happening. Like,
so what was
when they
first
told me, let me just say this. When they first, and this is to those from Abbott on the call in their defense. When they first explained it to me, they described it like it was a defibrillator, like it's going to be internal. So I was like, oh, I got a defibrillator. I can handle another device. It's no problem. So they come back in a couple of days later, the physician and his assistant, the physician's assistant, and they bring a pump in and they start describing it. And they showed me these cords. I was like, what is that? And so they start showing me the cords. I was like, I'm not getting that. And they're like, huh? And I was like, I'm not getting that, but you needed to live. I said, you didn't tell me I was gonna have a cord coming out my side. I was like, who's gonna want to date me? Like, that's not happening.
So
and they're looking at me like, you're not gonna be alive for anybody to date you. What are you talking about?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's it. My day was so I was all the way in California. So, not that I didn't have anyone there, but all the way in California, and I had been there for a month by now. I remember the first weekend I got there, I went to E.R.T., and then they took me, and then they're like, oh yeah, actually your condition, you were born with it. So in my head, I'm like, all this, that was 4 years into my
Wow.
journey. So in my head, I'm like, wow, okay. I wasn't guilty anymore, but then in my head, I was like, this, I could have just died any moment, right? So,
Yeah.
and then the other thing that happened is my wife was all the way in Tanzania. So if anybody doesn't know, that's like 2 continents left. And and I was texting her, and she's worried, I'm worried. And so they wanted to put an A.I.C.D into my chest, and I said, yes, let's do it. And then I said no, because I wanted her to be there. And likely I told her, I ended up saying yes again. So Thursday, so this was Monday, Thursday, we decided to have the procedure. And then during that time, I was having irregular heartbeat. So basically your heart goes out of rhythm, and then that was it. So in my case, they put on the device on Thursday. Friday, I get out of the hospital, and Sunday I had my first incident. And the funny thing, I didn't even know. But that day, like let's say I didn't have that thing put on when I had to put it on. That Sunday would have been like my last day here. That was it.
Oh, wow.
And the funny thing, that was the last day I had that incident, like since like 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So that was like, for me, that was a very and I thought I was out of the woodworks then, and this was like first week. And then I went to the E.R. twice. And then the 4th week, it's when I got in there and they're like, oh yeah, actually your heart is not getting better. You need a transplant. I didn't know what that meant. That meant moving to California. And then they're like, in the meantime, you have the L.V.A.D. We just didn't know it was like so much moving
Right.
pieces, so many moving pieces.
And
then
you were still in South Africa then?
No, this time I was in California. So
Okay.
so we had moved from South Africa to Senegal. We were living in Senegal. So I was doing a trip to California and then back to Boston and then going back home. And then the day I got there, I got sick. But then this means like moving all my life, once, this side of the world. But then one thing that was sure is that I couldn't do it alone. Like the doctors were very clear on that. So in your L.V.A.D journey, how do we, like, who's like your core system? Who's your caretaker? Who does your L.V.A.D dressings? Like, because this is a journey that you kind of needed some support around you. So what is the logistic around that for you?
Okay, well, I've always been very independent. So initially, well, I've got my first L.V.A.D, and I've had 2 L.V.A.Ds. I got my first L.V.A.D in 2012 in Indianapolis. And so at the time that I got my first L.V.A.D, I actually had a family friend named Kathy. She came and stayed with me. She works in the medical field. She stayed with me and my children to help, to assist me. But as far as dressing changes, my mother, Kathy, and I believe one other family member, they were trained, but because I'm so tall and so independent and a little stubborn, I wanted to do my own dressing change. And because of my height, that afforded me to be able to do that, because otherwise they didn't approve patients to do their own dressing changes. So my torso was very long. So I'm able to look down and be able to see everything the way I need to be able to, clean my dressing and do it myself. Yeah. So of course I got trained to do it. So I've been doing my own dressing changes from day one. That's since amazing. I got home. Yeah. Yeah. So as far as caregivers, so she was there to assist, I believe, for 90 days. They don't allow you to be by yourself. Even though my children are there, I still had to have someone had to be with you 24/7. Yeah. So I could never be alone. So she was there to assist, but I also had to be, self-sufficient, be able to get up and do things for myself before I even left the hospital. Let me say this. Now my recovery and my therapy, and because it's not the same at every center you go to, but my physical therapy, what I did in the hospital to prepare me to go home, I definitely believe that helped me 1,000%. I mean, they had me in the hallway holding onto the rails doing squats before I was discharged. We were like, are you serious? I just had open heart surgery. They're like, you can do it. And now I appreciate that. I thought I thought I was like a test dummy. Like, you're just doing this to me because you think I can, and you just want to see how far you can push me. Yeah. But I really realized how valuable that was, because that helped me when I got home, because I was cooking meals. I was doing things like normal. And that was because they pushed me so much to help me with my therapy. And then I continue outpatient therapy, cardiac rehab once I got home.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick on a few of your friends in a moment, but okay. I had a similar one. I had So I tell people I'm like 6'8". So I wake up off my surgery. First, I mean, I was just pushing them to remove the tube, but there's an elderly lady. She must have been 70, and she must be like 5 feet, probably less. And she's like, cough, asking me to get up and walk. I'm like, woman, what do you want? But she's like the right attitude that I needed, because I just wanted to get out and go home. I was very stoic. When they asked me what's the pain level, I'll be like, oh, 2. She's like, look here, boy, if you keep saying 2, we're not gonna give you any meds. It's like, say 7 or 8, But that was like she ended up being my best friend. I remember my mother-in-law was not happy with her. She's like, why is she talking to you like this? I'm like, this is what I did it. One thing that helped me though is that, it wasn't my first operation, I guess, on my body. I had knee surgeries and my wrist also. But every time there's an elderly woman was in his 70s or 60s, it's like,
Oh,
come here,
wow.
get up and walk. And so in my head, I'm like, oh man. So I was used to it, but that was definitely a big difference maker, because I remember by the time I got home, they didn't want me to do this, but I remember I go to the basketball court with my son and we were sprinting. I was just like, I'm fixed, I'm good. I love technology, and I felt like, I'm bionic now. So, and that was, just try to make more fun with it.
Yeah.
But I probably,
but when I just want to go back to the to my team, like when I first got out. So I had the caregiver that lived with us, but you're right, it takes an entire team. Like it takes an entire village. So my mother would take my son to school and pick him up. My son's school stepped up. I still have friends that we met as parents. He was in 4th grade then, and they literally he was brand new to the school. I mean, they stepped in. There's a website that allows you to like send people meals when they're recovering from surgeries or accidents or things. So they stepped in and sent meals to us for maybe like 2.5 weeks. My son actually would leave and go home with one of his classmates, eat a snack, do homework, and my mother would pick him up from there. That way, that was less for us to have to worry about. So it literally it took like a village to pull it off. And they're right.
I'd love to hear from your son one day.
That was yeah, you'll hear from him.
Yeah.
You'll hear from him. I see Latoya down there smiling.
Hi. Yeah. So probably Latoya can tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, that's Kobe's friend.
Oh, great. Awesome. What is the journey from where you stand? Like, we heard from the mom, and what was it for you? And what do you think? What do you think of her journey so far? And I know you mentioned a few, I guess, pretty words earlier, but I love to see if it's the truth this time. I'd love to see you. If you were just saying it for me. So.
Well, I met her, it might have been 10 years ago. Has it been longer?
Yeah, Kobe was like not even 2. He's 18.
Oh, wow, gosh. Wow. And wow, it's been so long. And wow, we met at work. She started working at a company that I was working at, and she joined, and I immediately took to her. And even then, I didn't know that she had a heart condition. I didn't even know that until later. And so even up until that point, I mean, I was just amazed at how she carried herself. And, I knew that she had health issues, but she never mentioned that she had a heart condition. And I was very shocked and surprised. And so as I got to know her, she moved on to another company, and it became later that she needed an L.V.A.D. And she has this heart and this positive, you look at her, and I remember there was a time, and I don't know if she's even shared this with you, where she was speaking of invisible disabilities, where there was a time where she was at home not being Georgia, and she was profiled because they couldn't see her handicap, and she was parked in the handicap stall.
Oh my God.
And how I watched that affect her.
Yeah.
And just how she dealt with it. in addition to everything else. So I've watched her transform into who she is today. And she's always remained positive. She's always, but that one incident there almost broke her.
Yeah.
And as her friend, just being there and just trying to be whatever I could be to her in that moment. Every moment, in and out of the hospitals, visiting the hospitals. And it was just watching her and just, when you look at somebody like Tina, who's going through so much, you realize perspective. It's not whatever your little thing might be is nothing compared to this woman who's raising 2 children, 2 boys by herself. She's always been active. She's in her yard doing things. She's her mother's child. I mean, her mom is just still traveling and doing and being, and I just love
She's
it.
on Zoom right now, which is amazing. It's like nobody's there helping her, doing tech support. I mean,
but her mom has always been there, and it's just any way I can support Tina, I'm going to be there.
I appreciate that.
Whatever she needs, whenever she needs it.
Wow, thank you so much. I mean, we're grateful for you. So now we know it's not just her. So it's like the people
no,
behind it.
but look, speaking of the working in the yard, so when I first got my defibrillator, it took them 6 months to talk me into getting a defibrillator. Because I went to Google and I started seeing like, okay, they can shock you and you don't. I was like, I'm not getting that. So I had to learn to stay off of Google. So finally one of my friends was like, it's a backup plan. He said if MJ had one, he might still be here. He was like, I can have a heart attack. Anybody can have a heart attack. He was like, it's just a backup plan. So I was like, you know what? You're right. So I was like, I'm going to go ahead and get it. So I get it. Then after the procedure, they give you this little book of your do's and don'ts and, what to stay away from. So I'm reading it. I'm still on the table. I'm reading it. And I was like, I can't come within 6 inches of a running lawnmower. I was like, I can't cut my grass. I was like, you didn't tell me that. I said, I would have never got this thing. And they looked at me like, are you serious?
Right. Oh my God. No, that's a fun part.
So I went and bought a real mower, the old school ones that doesn't have a motor.
There you go.
I found one of those on Craigslist.
You get to be active and physical. That's more, there's no engine. That's nice. Hi everyone. I mean, we have it's 10 to the hour, but I think we'll schedule a few more minutes. So if anybody feel like dropping off, don't feel shy. I want to hold it against you, but we will be here a few more minutes. So I just wanted to give a heads up for those that might be have to jump. And maybe
I'm gonna call out some of my heart sisters.
That's what I was gonna get to. So you're very active. You write in the blog. You're very involved into advocacy. So I wanted to see first, before we move to your friends, how important is this to you? Like, how important is it for you to share your story with the public? How important is this to share this message of positivity, but also just being human, obviously, right? So I think being positive is helpful, but it doesn't get it done. So I heard this joke one time that Shaquille O'Neal could be as positive as he wants. He couldn't be a great jockey or a great ice skater, but he will be able to have a good time. So positive is very important, but I think you're adding other elements to it, advocacy and some of the elements, and having community with your heart sisters and friends like that. So maybe can you tell us a little bit more about those groups or those organizations, and maybe also call on some of them as you, after you share that, what the organizations are about for.
Okay, so first I'll touch on when you mentioned how important is it to advocate and to share my story. So for me, when it comes to P.P.C.M, Peri-partum Cardiomyopathy, is extremely important because it's considered rare. Of course, us in the heart community, we don't consider it rare. We feel like, and there's actually been studies that have shown that pregnancy affects every woman's heart. So this is something that can happen to anybody, but there are tests that can be done. There's blood tests that can be done, BNP, proton, that are not standard, that are not done. And not only that, there's Dr. L.V.A.D, that's a physician that I've met through actually networking on Facebook, has a self-test. And I believe I sent that to you, and we can share that. We can share that in the link. There's a self-test that can be done as well while you're pregnant and postpartum. to catch, to watch out for the warning signs of heart failure in pregnancy. So my youngest son, Kobe, is 18. So I was diagnosed at 4 months after I had him. To this day, it's still unheard of. I mean, I can go to the ER and meet a nurse and she's like, oh, what happened? How did you get heart failure? You look so young. And tell her about P.P.C.M. and she's never heard of it.
Yeah.
And so to me, there's always going to be awareness until we have things like standard testing, until people are aware. People just literally are not aware. And I still shouldn't be meeting, I have heart sisters that are 18. I shouldn't be meeting 18-year-olds that have heart failure from having their first baby and end up with the L.V.A.D or a transplant. These things are something that can be prevented. So I really feel like it's almost an obligation for my part, because if I can share my story and connect with one person just to help them through the journey, because when you're like we both talked about, like when you get that diagnosis, it's a shocker. You're scared. You don't know what to think, what to believe. And of course, your family and friends, they're supporting, they're there the best that they can be. But when you can make that connection with somebody who's actually experiencing who has experienced what you're about to go through, it just makes it, it's a different type of connection. And we need that. We need these stories to be shared. We need the awareness. Not even just the P.P.C.M. So the L.V.A.D piece, I joked about how I didn't want to get it, but my L.V.A.D has literally become my best friend. Like, it saved my life more than once. Like, I went into cardiac arrest driving my son to school with a heart rate of 392. And if it wasn't for my L.V.A.D, I wouldn't be here.
Wow.
And so that's another thing I take to heart, is being able to go to hospitals and meet patients who are contemplating getting an L.V.A.D, because I'm not saying that everything is going to be rocky, and my story may not be your story. Everybody's going to have their own, experience, but I like to give insight as to, some of the things you may be able to expect. And I've experienced the good and the bad. So I kind of like having that balance, because I can, tell you, hey, this is what I've gone through. This is what I've overcome. And this is where I'm at today. Would I do it all over again? I would.
That's
So,
amazing.
so being able to share and connect with other patients, it's extremely valuable. It's important to me. It's a necessity. And over the years, I've made these great connections from some of my heart sisters are on here today, who also have their own awareness. So I started Heart Sisters just as a way to get people motivated to say, hey, you know what? We have heart failure, we have heart disease, but that doesn't mean that we can't live life. Because I tell people, like, I've been at my rock bottom. I've been asked by the chaplain at my local hospital, what am I most proud of? And I thought about it, and I told her, I said, you know what? I've fallen, but I got back up.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm most proud of. So being able to just connect with other women, share, having that shared experience, and it may not even be just as a patient. I mean, I've connected with women who have had family members that have had heart failure and may have maybe not survived, and we still have those connections. And because this diagnosis doesn't just impact the patient, it impacts everybody. It's going to impact families, friends, communities. So Heart Sisters was developed as a way to say, hey, you know what? I got this L.V.A.D. You may have heart failure. You may have diabetes. Regardless of what we have going on in our lives, you know what? That's life. Unfortunately, it's just what we were dealt, but we're not just going to let it take us out. That doesn't mean we stop living. So, hey, I can still put on my stilettos and my skinny jeans and
Be praised.
hey, and be considered not disabled and get harassed in handicapped parking.
Compliment. It's a compliment. What's some of those sisters that we have here today?
Okay, so there's a couple. So Latoya and I met. She's actually a new advocate with heart failure, the company you and I both work for, that we write for.
Yeah,
She's a new advocate.
Hi, Latoya. Let me see if she can say a few words. I'd love to hear a perspective about the kid too. Hi,
everyone.
And Latoya also, I hope she doesn't mind me saying that she's also an L.V.A.D sister.
What? This when?
I got my L.V.A.D July 25th, 2018.
And which one did you get?
I have a H.E.A.R.T.S.
Oh, yes, yeah. From the other guys, we won't say that name. How's that for you?
I would say, given the situation I was in when I found out that I had to have an LVAD, it was the best decision. Given the situation I was in when I received the LVAD, it's the best decision I made. It was really, for me, it was a choice between getting an LVAD or going into hospice. So, like Tina, I was a mother again because it wasn't my first pregnancy. So I was a repeat mother, and my diagnosis came about 6 months postpartum for being diagnosed with P.P.C.M. But by the time I got the LVAD, I was 6 months postpartum. And so there's a story behind that. So it was, do you accept having a few months to live, or do you take a chance to extend your life? So, and through it, I met Tina and some other wonderful people. So I'm very happy I went with the LVAD.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm sure I'm making a note already. Like I said, we're gonna call on some of you for some of the next calls. So thanks a lot. I love to hear. I'm not sure if she's one of the H.E.A.R.T sisters. I think she might be a friend, but I love to hear from D, Miss D, that you recognize for some reason. I'm not sure. Hi, D.
Hi, everyone. I'm just so happy to be here. And Tina, I was just writing in a blog that she's such a phenomenal woman. I haven't sent it yet. And this world is truly a better place because of her. So we are truly blessed. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I remember when I met her, which has been some time, but not as long as others. Just a brief story without going in detail. My husband is a dual transplant patient. He too also wore the L.V.A.D for 5 years before he was gifted with a heart and a kidney all in the same night. Tina and I have been friends. We have talked a lot about what she mentioned a little bit, but this is a totally different conversation. How to be an advocate and how to also talk to your caregivers. Not just your caregivers, but your hospital staff and what have you, because we have found challenges, particularly being Black females. I know I've had a challenge throughout my husband ordeal, and he has gone through a lot of health challenges, but thank you, God, he's probably healthier than I am right now. So ladies who are still waiting, don't ever give up hope. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you are not the MVP of your life, which I call the most valuable player. You have a responsibility to have a voice and let that voice be heard. But again, I just want to thank Tina, and I want to thank you too, because I read your story. I got online and looked at amazing story, just an awesome story. And I wish I can just borrow it and just pass it out. But I do try, I do also try to give back what I was so generously given, because when we went on this journey, I knew of no one. I knew about transplants, but I knew nothing about transplants. I knew what the definition was by Webster, but I had no idea what it involved. Yeah. And I certainly didn't have any idea what LVADs involved. And I certainly did not know anyone else that had one, or anyone else that was needing a dual transplant. And when I asked for talk to me, let me know what's going on. Let me talk to someone else that looks like me at least, So I do understand, ladies and gentlemen, what you're going through, but God is good and God is real. And you just have to call on your higher power, whatever you choose to call him. I choose to call him God. But Tina, we love you.
Thank you. Love you too, Misty.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is amazing. I thought you were making this up, pretty lady. Now, there's some truth to it. I don't know who else was going to validate that, but that's amazing. Really also great story to I'd love to hear more from Didi, Misty at some point, but this is amazing. And I think the toughest part for me, it's only after, well, not after, but it's only after being a dad that I realized how tough it must be for my parents or even my wife. to care for somebody who has heart issue, or I mean chronic illness, but heart issue. Because my son luckily has been healthy all along, but the one time, this was in Senegal, he had this virus. He was just losing weight, and we had to take him to the hospital, and they ended up having IV, and it was 6 months, and I was there just watching him helpless, and try to comfort him and stuff. And now I'm like, I feel like it's the same person that I am. I mean, I'm grown now, but I'm sure it's the same reaction for my mom or my parents. And for my wife, it was more complicated because you're still discovering each other. So she didn't know if it's me being upset or moody, or if it's a condition causing it. And some of the things we still, like I would say 10 years ago, but like many years ago, she's only like, oh, this is what you meant. So you have to deal with all of that while you're dealing with the, day to day. So yeah, I'd love to hear more from some of the other heart sisters, but I love her point about being an MVP, because I think that was a big, that's something I'll take note of in terms of being the leader of the process you're in, and give it to God. Who else
Now,
do we have?
there are a couple other ones. Sophia, Brianna, and Deidre are also my heart sisters. Sophia
Hi,
actually
I'll probably just
has had,
unmute them.
okay, let's just unmute.
Yeah.
Sophia actually had a transplant. Yay.
Wow.
And she's a member of Women's Heart out she's in California. Brianna actually hasn't had a heart transplant or LVAD, thank God. That she hasn't needed either one of those.
Yeah.
She actually has a nonprofit called Let's Talk P.P.C.M. And where
Can
she
somebody
highlights
send us that link? Can somebody
okay.
send me that link? Yeah. Go ahead.
And she highlights other women's stories that have been diagnosed with P.P.C.M. And she actually works with ACOG this year, which is the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, to bring more awareness. Yeah. And then Deidre is one of my heart sisters, and she advocates in her local community, and she's a sweetheart. So just making these connections and just watching everybody do their part, because I tell everybody, like, you don't have to, the way I use my voice is not how you have to use your voice. We all, can make a difference in our own little way. It can be you just meeting that one person can go out and impact 10,000.
Yeah.
So we just never know. Even if that one person was all that you were meant to help, you serve the purpose. So you want to speak to if any of you have anything to say?
Yeah, please. Please, you can unmute yourself and say a few words. And if anyone to ask a question, also just please ask directly or let me know. But we'll probably have like 10 more minutes, so we have a bit more time. But I'd love to hear from a few of you, if you can, please.
Well, hello, I'm Brianna. I'm Tina's heart sister. Hey, Tina.
Hi, Marie.
Hey, I've been enjoying this conversation, and it touches me in a different type of way. Miss Tina has always been a blessing towards me, and inspiration and motivational, and she's real, 100%. So when I met Miss Tina, we have different stories, because I did go into the heart failure, and I do have an ICD, with pacemaker defibrillator. But the thing about the LVAD is okay, let me go back to my beginning of my story. Sorry. Okay, my sister had developed congested heart failure at 27. It was an unknown type of deal. They didn't know what was going on. They thought it was a viral infection. They thought it was something, that they couldn't understand why her heart had failed. And it came to the question, or if she wanted an LVAD. And I remember, them trying to explain it to her and everything. But the thing is, what I wish that she would have been around for was a session like this that you guys are doing today, because my sister didn't understand the importance of what the LVAD was going to do for her, and she ended up declining the LVAD because she rather had waited on a heart transplant than the LVAD. So, but I guess the doctors knew everything was escalating quickly. She ended up dying like 6 months after, them trying to figure out what was wrong with her heart.
And it wasn't until, you know, a few years later when I met Miss Tina that she was letting me know about the importance of the LVAD and, you know, and what happens when you refuse it. And, you know, and I didn't know that, you know, that important information. So I just take that information now for the heart sisters or the stories that I do share, or if, you know, other heart sisters have questions about anything, or if theirs escalated further than mine did, like my sisters, you know, where they need an LVAD, I would know to try to convince them or talk them into it, or even at least, you know, pray that they have a change of heart so it could, you know, have a chance, they could have a chance to live and enjoy, you know, the rest of their life with their family. So I'm just to thank y'all for having me, you know, in the session today. And I'm praying for you, Miss Theta.
Bree, share a little bit about Let's Talk P.P.C.M.
Oh, well, I share stories of heart sisters around the world. So it's nationwide, United Kingdom. We got Nigerian, Hades. We got all around the world. And so it was actually a blog that I had started in 2018, and I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. I just wanted to start it because that's what God put on my heart to do. So I didn't ignore the calling that He put in my heart. I just went ahead and did it. No money, no thought, no anything. You know, I was already something I had in my head. Let's talk P.P.C.M. because that's what I wanted to talk about. So people kept telling me to make it a podcast and make it this and make it that, but I already had my own heart desire for whatever I wanted to do with it. So I went with that. I ended up turning into an organization. And now I'm just slowly making connections and networking around, you know, with people around the world. So yeah, I'm just glad I listened to God's voice that day.
Yeah. Please connect. I mean, we're gonna talk more, but I would really love to hear more about your platform, and definitely support that and get others to support it. And I love to say it. I think today's a special day also, especially with what happened yesterday. We have our first vice president, what's it, Kamala Harris. So I really, you know, I guess it was a pretty sight for everyone. So to break the ice a little bit, I wanted to ask everyone, maybe Tina first, but who was the best dressed yesterday? Was it Michelle, Kamala, or Amanda at the inauguration?
Who was the best what?
The best dressed.
Michelle, Kamala, or who?
Amanda.
Anders.
Amanda did the poem. She was the poet.
Oh, no, Michelle. Michelle.
Everybody, I guess. All right, so amazing.
Definitely got it.
Yeah, Michelle.
I'm glad.
Definitely Michelle.
There you go. Okay. I'm sure nobody will say Kamala here. No, me too. I agree with Michelle. I felt like it was a dragon outfit. I just, Obama is like, I guess. No, we
All
have.
right, Safila. All right, Safila, you're not getting away.
Yeah,
Safila has to share.
She's been smiling all along, and you know, she
I
know.
My name is Sophia.
Yeah.
It started. I met Tina. Thank God for Tina. Oh, she's an angel.
Hey, y'all making me feel good today.
How many people you think? Yeah, like I need friends like this. I have a friend here. I gotta get them to say things like this. Yeah.
I'm actually a registered nurse, and I was working on a cardiac floor. And my doctor, I went to see my doctor because I was having chest pain, and I knew it wasn't normal. So I told him, you know, I think there's something wrong. So he did the EKG, and it showed some abnormalities. And he just told me it was my asthma, but I knew no. So I stopped a cardiologist on my floor, and I told him I have heart failure. And he asked me why. So I told him all the symptoms that I had and why I felt like I had heart failure. And so he ended up taking me for another procedure. Sure enough, he found out that I did have heart failure.
What was that procedure?
He took me to cath lab. So he did a left heart cath.
Yes. So
he did that, and he found out at the time my EF was 44. And about 6 months later, it dropped to 20%. And then I still continued to work. I was working 2-3 jobs at the time. I was crazy.
Yeah.
And over the years, about 8 years between, from that time that I was diagnosed till transplant, I've had a couple different procedures to prolong life. One was the mitral clip. They've done that twice. I've had an AICD a couple of times. They had to repair it. And then the last thing that they were going to do before transplant was they talked about a defibrillator or LVAD.
Yeah.
Even being a nurse, like Tina said, going to the ER, some of the nurses didn't know anything about P.P.C.M. So, which is normal for us because when we learn in school, they give us a small thing saying you can get heart failure from pregnancy, but they don't tell, that's it. That's all you get. So of course we don't know about it. Even working on a heart floor, I didn't know. And then I didn't know about LVADs because the facility I work for, we're not advanced cardiology. So we only get a limited. So when I heard about LVAD, I'm like, what is that? I've never heard of this. And so I had to do more research on it. And then I was scared when they told me I needed LVAD. I was like, I've never had a patient with an LVAD. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. So I was devastated. You know, I'm 33 when I first got diagnosed. So I'm like, I don't know anybody that's young that had heart failure. And then when I met Tina, it was 2 years ago. A lady told me I was at a Go-Red event. So she told me, hey, you know, my I think it was her granddaughter or her daughter that had it, her daughter-in-law that had heart failure. So she linked me up with her, and then she linked me up with Tina. And so I was
all
just
the way
like,
from
okay.
Cali, all the way from Cali to Georgia.
Yes. And so it was just like, it was just God's sin. And so I was still working 40 hours a week, and I went to work. And then one day I was just like,
40 hours a week. Why? Like, why was
I was working 60 something hours. And then I stopped
I'm
3 years
not just
before.
dissing. I just feel like that spirit, that stubbornness, and that determination.
I was
Part of the
crazy.
reason you silly life, because like you just don't do anything halfway.
Yeah. So then 3 years prior to transplant, I finally said, no more. I'm working 40 hours. That's it. So the heart transplant team was like, how can you get a heart transplant when you're working still full time? Most of our patients, they don't work. They're too sick to work. So how can we prove that you need a heart when you're still working like that? But me, I was just like, well, if I don't work, I can't afford my insurance. I'm going to die. So I have to try to work. My EF dropped to 10%. So I was still working 40 hours a week.
For those that might not know, a normal EF is 55 to 70 or something. So 10 is like, you shouldn't be standing. You should be
in the bed. So I worked like that for a whole year. And finally I called them and said, I don't know how much longer I can live. I need to come in. And so they brought me in, and then they told me about an LVAD, and they said, you're absolutely right. You need to be transplanted. You were right. And so that night when they came in, they brought the LVAD stuff in. I was devastated. I was crying. And then I reached out to Tina because I found her on Facebook from the other lady that told me about her. And she's like, call me, and we talked. And from there, we talked ever since. And I felt better after I talked to her because she actually had one and she lived it. And so I was just asking her lots and lots of questions. And I was like, okay, so if this is what I need to get to live longer, then this is what I have to do. And so they end up taking me to cath lab and doing a right and left heart cath. They found that I can just go ahead and get the transplant. So they kept me in the hospital. And about 7 weeks later,
you had totally messed up your heart.
Huh?
You had totally messed up your heart by then. Like, I'm not sure that anybody would have helped.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. So what happened was when they did the mitral clip, they said some kind of way everything was compensating. So it wasn't that bad, but they were just like, you don't need the LVAD. We'll just skip over the LVAD. You have time. So they skipped over the LVAD, and I just stayed there. They had me on the Marilon, I think it's called. So they had me on that. Yes. So they had me on that. And about 7 weeks later, I was transplanted with a heart.
Wow. This is amazing.
Tina talks to us every
day. Tina was your nurse here. This is how you're the nurse. You're supposed to be the nurse.
But you know what's so funny about it? My transplant team for 8 years, I had heart failure for 8 years before I was actually transplanted. And through those 8 years, the doctor would come in and she was just like, the transplant doctor, she was just like, you know what, you did a good job by keeping yourself alive for 8 years, even though I was crazy. But I actually, being a nurse and a cardiac nurse, I adjusted my meds and I told them this is what we're doing. And so because I had that knowledge, it helped me. But I always tell people, the doctors, they would tell me, oh, you look fine. You don't look like you're fluid overloaded. And I'm like, no, I'm overloaded. I need to increase my Lasix. And then sure enough, when they would do my cast, they're like, you're right, you're overloaded. Yeah. So then they got to the point where they would say, how do you feel? We can't go by your looks. How do you feel? And that's how they were adjusting it. Because I'm like, I'm adjusting it. And now, even now, they're like, okay.
Yeah, no, that's important. I think, because everybody is different. And I think this is not necessarily, and I think maybe race has something to do with it, but it's like we go with the norm, and the norm, we don't fit the norm, right?
Exactly. That's what they told me.
Yeah, so in my case, I remember I had fluid in my, but it was inside like my heart, which is usually not, I don't even know how it got there, but they were looking in the lungs and other areas, so there was no signs of it. And I saw a professor, and he's a lung and heart doctor, and he looks at it, and it's like, this is water. I'm like, I've had this same film forever. Like, nobody said it was water. And then that's how we found it. But I think my last question for you before I go, you said this is when you were crazy. You said that many times. Are you less crazy now, or are you not like?
Well, so I promised myself that once I got my heart, that I was not going to do those activities, working all those jobs, because I think when I got diagnosed, it helped contribute to me with all the stress and the overworking. It helped contribute to my heart failure getting worse. So I said, as soon as I get a new heart, like, I'm not going to do that. So I always have to tell myself, you have to keep doing like 40 hours less, no more than 40 hours, no 2-3 jobs. So no.
Is there nobody nagging you around there, like trying to keep you in line? Like, because it seems like, is there anybody helping? Is it Tina?
Yes.
Yeah. When I start getting those crazy thoughts, I'll just talk to Tina. Hey.
All right, thank you. This is amazing. Wow.
Oh, she got a whole team keeping her in line.
That's amazing.
Oh yeah, they don't play.
So guys, we can go on forever, and I know Tina, we talked already like many times, and I'd love to talk again. And I'm sure nobody will say no to this. We definitely have to have a part 2 of this call. So we'll look at the calendars and schedule that. But before we get into the last word, I'd like to see if anyone else wants to say a few words before we get Tina to share her last thoughts here.
Hi, I'm Deirdre. I just want to, is it okay if I speak? I just wanted to thank Tina and you so much for raising awareness, basically, and teaching us about the LVAD. I haven't known Tina like for all that long, but she's been such a support to me. She's just been such a support to me over the past few years, and is like such a positive person. And my main goal, like over the past few years, is to like stop, the pictures keep flashing on my screen, but to stop mothers from dying from P.P.C.M. I've just been seeing it. I was diagnosed 18 years ago and have been part of, a mom support group, and now, in Tina's group. And it's just heartbreaking to see this happen. Yeah. And that, doctors and nurses still don't know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a long way to go. And I think hopefully like by sharing some of these stories will be help, will support that a little bit. I feel like that was also one piece that is missing. Also raise awareness so that there's more doctors involved in this specific field. Because your doctors might not tell us, but our doctors might not tell us, but I don't think there's enough cardiologists or enough people in public health focusing on heart health in general. So I really commend this, sharing the stories, and especially from you know, the women perspective, you guys really touch, women touch on everybody in the society, whether it's being caregivers, caretakers, and the perspective is really important, and it's much more humane, I would say. So I'm just flashing through the pictures, but I think one big part I'm getting from these stories, or also relating to my story, is that when something like this happens, obviously you think about mortality and all of that. But one thing we learn, we seek out of life is to really, how do I say this, to kind of find meaning. Like there's this pursuit of purpose, like purpose. Tina was asking, was saying. But what I realized I guess in my case, I'll ask Tina if she can, it's the same for her or if she relates to it. But I feel like this hard journey helped me kind of find the answer to that question. Not in the sense that I was really asking, you know, what my purpose. And I remember I was on a plane ride home and I was talking to this elderly man and telling him all the activities I was involved in. And it's like, well, you guys give me hope because, you know, you are doing what you're supposed to do, which is give meaning to your life. You don't kind of find it, you give it. And by doing some of the things you guys are doing through sharing your stories, having multiple jobs, and then on top of that, doing this. I know she's saying 40 hours, but I'm sure she's doing more than that. And still be able to share your story and work through the communities, having organization. That's, to me, I'm just so impressed. And it's motivating for me, but it's really such a big inspiration. So I want to check with Tina if that was, you know, a similar story, and maybe from there you can segue to your last words for today.
Yeah, it's definitely motivation. I remember there was a heart sister I had met in Indiana. So I was a patient advocate there as well before we moved to Georgia. And I remember I was at a doctor's appointment. I was about to leave the doctor's appointment. This is just sharing when I first met her. And I was about to leave, and my doctor was like, the coordinator, I should say, was like, you know, the patient I wanted you to meet, she's here with her family. Do you have time to meet her today? And I looked down, I'm like, I'm dressed for the gym because at that time I was working out twice a day with my L.V.A.D. And so I was like, well, I have on my gym clothes. And she's like, you look fine. Because I have this thing I picture this thing in my head that when I meet patients, I want them to see me at my best, even though I'm not going to always be at my best. So I like to get my lashes done, my makeup, put on my heels, and, you know, I walk in with my skinny jeans on. I want to walk in and you not expected to meet me as the patient. Yeah. So when she was like, you know, can you talk to her today? I'm like, I got on tennis shoes. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So go out into the waiting room, and they're in the waiting room. She's like, oh, remember the patient I told you about? I'm like, yeah. They're like, this is her. And they're like, where? And so it was funny because I'm like, yeah, it's me. And they're like, no, there's no way you have an L.V.A.D or heart failure. So we go in the room and we talk and, you know, share stories. We're able to connect. So fast forward, she gets her L.V.A.D, and I went to visit her after, you know, post-op a couple days later, and she was she had some complications and they had to put her back on the intubator. And so when I go and I walk by the family room and her brother's in there, he was like, oh, you just missed the rest of our family. They went to get something to eat. Everybody, you know, really wants to meet you. And he starts sharing, like, you just don't realize what you mean to her and what you mean to us. And at that moment, when I tell you, when I walked out the hospital, like, I was like overcome with just these tears and emotion, because I told him, I was like, no, you don't understand what you mean to me. Like, you know, I get that, you know, how valuable we are to other patients when we're sharing. But for me in that moment, it was like to be able to live in my purpose, and then for people to actually, you know, to be able to just to get that, I wouldn't even say acknowledge, but just the impact, and being able to see the impact that you have on somebody's life because you're living in your part of your purpose. Because I feel like this is just part of the purpose. Mm-hmm. Like, it was the most amazing feeling. I was just like, thank you, God. Like, I left out of there just like, okay, I have to keep doing this because I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Thanks for doing that.
It was the most amazing feeling.
Thanks for doing that, and I'm definitely I'm so encouraged, and it's like you meet some people you impress, right, and it just gets bigger and bigger, and all the friends you paid today to come say good stuff about you, I know, you know, you couldn't afford them. So, but I'm really I'm really motivated. I'm so inspired, like guys. And obviously we can keep on talking forever, but I wanted to take a moment to say thank you everybody for joining and all of you for sticking through. This is 90 minutes that went by so quick. And I'm so impressed. And I think we're gonna have more calls of these. We're gonna have more calls with yourself. There'll be a follow-up. And I have a few more names. All you people that were here today have some follow-up calls. We want to hear more about the craziness on Sophia's side. We want to hear about Miss D and the husband, Latoya, all of you. So thank you so much. And I think, one thing we're doing is a strong community, and whether, we're black or white or different colors, but I think it's really important that we it's just a part of us. This heart disease is just one factor, because we're so much more. And you're working, you're living, you inspire people, touching lives. What else? There's nothing else. So I really wish you all the best with the LVAD. I think the heart should come soon, but when it comes, we want it to be the best heart.
Yes.
No complication or nothing. I know you'll do the right thing. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm really I'm touched. I don't know what else to say to end this call, but I'm really impressed, and I'm really happy to have met all of you, and we look forward to the next ones. So stay tuned. And yeah, thank you so much. And especially
thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, Adela.
I'm actually in Arizona, Tina, instead of
California. Are you? I didn't know you were in Cali. Yes. Oh, I thought you were in Cali. Okay. That's my cousin in Arizona.
I have mountains in back of me. I'm outside.
Okay. Are you? Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, isn't it beautiful?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of snow on the mountains.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
And we have sunshine, of course. We almost always have sunshine in Arizona.
Wow, that's good. It's cloudy here today.
Thank you, Maylee, for inviting me, because I came from a family. My mom had heart disease and she died from heart disease. So this is really, really good information for me to be aware of. And I'm going to definitely take it to heart. Proud of you, Tina.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And your journey, and for you sharing and encouraging the other women in the group.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Mommy Mary. You take care, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you all. Noli, thank you, guys. Bye.
All right, goodbye.